Hi, Brian. Can you hear me? You can type in chat if you don't have a microphone. Hi, Ethan. Type and let me know if you can hear me talking.
No.
All right, good. Right now my computer says hosting is paused. I'm not sure what that's meaning, so I'm trying to share my screen with you all. Can you see anything of screen sharing? You can just type your answer. Okay, cool. So do you see the Cisco NetAcad book? All right, perfect. All right, we'll give everybody just a couple minutes. People are joining. And then we'll get started. Thank you guys for coming online. Sorry I couldn't manage to get myself there in a timely fashion through traffic tonight. I was thankful to see that they had Collaborate available so I could do an online session. Well, that worked out pretty good. So we'll just give everybody just a couple more minutes to get logged in and loaded, and then I'll get started. Hi, DJ. Hi, Michael. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. We're giving just a few minutes for everybody to join. Oh, no worries, DJ. Have you figured out how to get on to Collaborate? Okay. Good. Okay, good. All right, I'll just give one more minute. I'll wait till 6:05, and then I'm going to get started. You guys have figured out how to get on to Blackboard Collaborate, which is good. I have used this tool lots of times in my other courses and in my online courses. So one of the features that I am doing is I am recording this session. So if outside of tonight's session you want to go back and look at it, you should be able to. Now, the one thing I don't know positively for sure, at CCBC I have a little, I have the capability of converting this recording to a file type that I can place on YouTube. I assume that it's available at ACC as well. And then I have a YouTube channel. I'll just place it up on YouTube and then send you guys the link. And then if you want to look at it, you can. It usually takes a little while for it to convert, so I might not be able to upload it until tomorrow. All right, wait, hang on one second. I am at home, so there's noises. Let me go quiet things down behind me, and my dogs may bark. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. If there's background noise that you guys are hearing, it's too much, just let me know. I tried to turn all the noises around off, but my dogs will possibly bark, so sorry about that. All right, so let me go over back to Canvas a little bit here. Do you guys have any questions? If you have any questions, you can just type them in before I say what I want to say. All right, so thanks again for those of you who are here with us tonight with me. And sorry for the late change of venue, but hopefully this will be the only time this happens, and my car will be good and I'll be fine going forward. So this week we're finishing up Chapter 8. I have on the screen, and hopefully you guys can see my shared screen, the assignments that you have for homework. So if you didn't already do 8147, you got to do that packet tracer, 8214 and 8314. So we'll finish up subnetting tonight. In addition to that, make sure you do the Chapter 8 exam, which is down here, and then there's the chapter skill from last week, which I asked you to do, and then there's another chapter skill, which is actually about Chapter 7, which again goes back to that same kind of stuff of the first, last, broadcast, and network ID that you've been doing. So make sure you get all these complete if you haven't done that already. I know some of you have done a lot of that stuff already. So hopefully you got a chance to look at some of these videos, if not all of these videos, to give you an idea, a little bit more details and a little bit more reinforcement on what subnetting is all about. And as we move on to the next phase of subnetting, last time we were reviewing subnetting based on the number of subnets we needed. And if you remember in the book, and let me just go back to here, we were looking at subnetting based on the octet boundaries, so /8, /16, /24, and how that kind of switched up the number of subnets you had versus the number of hosts you had. And we discovered that the rules are always the same, no matter which subnet we were using, with the magic number, if you remember going through that. Now, if at any time you guys have questions, just type it in the chat and I'll stop and answer your questions. If you want me to go over something, let me know. Then we moved on to talking about classless subnetting, and we were pretty much just working in the last octet with that. So as opposed to being on the octet boundary, we were borrowing 1, 2, 3, up to 6 bits in the last octet to get our subnets into a very small number of usable subnets, or usable number of hosts, I mean. So like in a /30, it's clear down to only 2 usable addresses per subnet, which we often use, as I mentioned, on the WAN links and everything in between. The goal here being that we are going to subnet to be as efficient as possible. And we also discussed that often Cisco will mention, well, actually more often than not, they don't mention leaving room for growth. They will say that they want you to be as efficient as possible. So they will say subnet being as efficient as possible. So you're going to get as close to the number as they're telling you. And in the reality, you would probably leave space for growth if you were out in the field doing this work. So we're going to do what they ask us to do based on the assignments that we're given. So most of the time, Cisco asks to be as efficient as possible. So we talked about subnetting based on the octet boundary. We talked a little bit about classless subnetting. And then the next thing is subnetting to meet the requirements of the host requirements. So we talked a little bit about that last time too, that based on the number of hosts we were needing, and this is what we're really going to concentrate on tonight, we would do subnetting based on host requirement. Now, I gave you the example of you might have hosts that vary in size. Like you might have a host requirement of 30 and another network that needs 20 and another network that needs 10 hosts. So what do you do with that? Well, you're going to subnet based on the largest number there, because at this point we're still just doing fixed length subnetting. So we're going to divide our pieces of the pie into equal usable hosts in each piece of pie. So if we had a 30 and a 20 and a 10, then you would go to the biggest, which would be the 30. And then in the others you would have room to stretch out. So this particular section is talking about just that. So let's remember what those two, I can't think of the word, formulas. Let me open up Word. Can you guys, if you'll be able to see this, can you see, I might have to switch something. Can you see my blank Word document? Just let me know in the chat if you can see that. Okay, that's kind of what I thought. I'm going to have to give you a different share screen for the Word document. Okay, so I have to click a button. It may take a second to switch it over to, come on. Okay. There's my sharing. Do you guys see anything at all now? Yeah, that's what I thought. Did it come back? The sharing is back on, but I don't see what I normally see to know that I usually have a yellow box. Do you guys see anything on the screen, even just if it's the online book? Okay, not yet. All right, let me see why it's being fussy. Okay, can you see it now? Okay, yay. All right, I'm not sure if it's going to, now let me say, does it let you see this Word document? Okay, terrific. Okay, so let's remember our two formulas. So, n to the, an exponentiation won't be easy to do right now. N to the what power would equal us number of subnets, right? And then we had n to the something power minus 2 that equaled number of usable hosts. So the exponent, let's see if I can put this in here easily, but I bet I won't. I can try with font here. Superscript, right? N to the, I think they say S. Yay, I did it. And let's do superscript again, and we say H. So one of them is number of host bits, and one of them is how many bits we borrowed, right? So the S would equal number of bits borrowed, and the H here, number of host bits, right? All right, so let's say we have a problem where we have been asked to accommodate the 30, the 20, and the 10 that I mentioned. So these are, when I say 30, 20, 10, I'm talking about number of usable hosts per subnet. So the process of figuring that out would be, you would need to use, this, okay? So basically you can think about how many host bits would I need to have in order to accommodate 30, and as close as I can get to 30. So it's really just kind of trial and error, so if we say 2 to the 6th minus 2, and I won't be able to do this, well, I can, but I can't do it easily. Okay, so let's just say 2 to the 6th, oh, I did it backwards, minus 2. Sorry about that. And what does that equal? Anybody know? You can type it in. So if we have 6 host bits, how many usable host addresses will we end up with? 62. Very good. So 62 would be what we get if we had 6 bits. So that's a little bit big. So let's go down 1. So 2. I'm still in superscript. Wrong one. Oh, there it is. Good. It finally came up. Let's turn that off. 2 to the 5th minus 2 would equal, anybody know that answer real quick? Yes, it would get us 30, okay? So what we end up discovering is this is going to be our answer. We're going to have 5 host bits, all right? So with 5 host bits, what CIDR is that going to be? /29? Not, I don't think so. Good guess. Let's write it out. Okay? So if I were writing this out in binary, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm doing the subnet mask. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that's 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 24. And we're going to have 3 network and 5 hosts. That's too many. So how many ones do we have here? 8, 16, 24, 25, 26, 27. So with 5 host bits, we'll end up creating a /27. Okay? Questions about that? So here are our network bits. We can make them yellow. And here are our host bits to make them red. Okay? Questions about that so far? All right, so let's pretend we had this, we'll just go easy, 192.168.10.0/24. Okay? Now, we want to accommodate, this is our host requirements here. We know we're going to do a /27. Now, you can still use the magic number to come up with, in the last octet, what are we going to increase by? Because the value of this last bit right here in the subnet mask is what they're going to go up by. And that value is 32. Okay? So what you're going to have is 192.168.10.32 /27. This is going to have to be a /27 as well. And then you're going to continue. Whoops, look at my typing. Roll backwards there. 10.64 /27. 96 /27, and you could continue. DJ, what's your question? Just let me know where you need me to start over. Do you need me to start over at the magic number? Okay. So I got to 32 because it's the bit value of this last network bit. So we called that the magic number. Remember that? Whoops. And it equals 32 because that's what this bit value is. So this is a subnet mask. There's our 8, 8, third 8, and then 1, 2, 3 in the last octet. That last number 1 in that last set of 8 bits, its bit value is 32. It's in the 32 spot in the 8 bits. And then that's the magic number, and that's what that last octet is going to increase by to get us. Each one of these is a network ID. Okay? Making sense now? Remembering that from last time? Okay, good. Whoops. See, I say okay, I type okay. And then you would continue. Now, we only needed 3, right? 3 subnets. We know we were going to get more than that. And if you wanted to know how many, 2 to the how many bits borrowed, it's going to give you the number of subnets. And we borrowed 3 bits. We borrowed these 3 right here. And so 2 to the 3rd is going to get us what? How many subnets are we going to end up with? Anybody know? Is it 20? Nobody's typing. 2 to the 3rd power is what? Someone give me that answer. Yay. Correct. 8. So what we would end up with is 8 subnets. We could continue on to get the others. Questions about that so far? All right, so far so good? All right, I'm going to try to switch back over to the browser without losing it all. I think it's working better this time. Can you guys now see the online book? All right, good. All right, so what they're going through here is subnetting based on requirements, the same kind of thing that I just did, giving you a couple more examples. So here in this example, they had 5 networks, and the biggest number was 40. So they would subnet to accommodate that 40. Now, where did they start? Oh, it looks like it was a 172.16.00 /22. Is that where it started? I guess. You're going to get a lot of, that's really way more than needed. So let me read over here about why they're doing that. All right, they ended up doing it all the way down. So here, but I guess they just started at a /22. That's what they're showing you, and they went to a 26, which the 26 would be the right number. Just interesting that they started at a /22, which is fine. It doesn't matter where you start. You're going to use the same methods to get you to your final answer, which is using the formula to get you where you need to be. And where you wanted to be, if you see right here, is 2 to the 6th power minus 2 got a 62 hosts. That's as close as you can get to 40. So they decided we needed 6 host bits. Therefore, they borrowed 4 and then went from there to do their subnetting scheme. So that's the way you do it based on host requirements. You just use, the other formula first, and then use subnet based on host as opposed to based on how many networks that you need. The reality is sometimes you have to use both of those things. You have to accommodate how many networks you need, plus you need to get as close as possible on host, and that's really kind of where you end up working. Now there are some activities here at the end that I recommend that you guys work on your own to just perfect these skills, because practice, practice, practice is what's going to get you to where you want to be with subnetting. So let's look at this lab, this 8146. Let me open this in Adobe. All right, let me make it a little bit smaller. Okay. Otherwise, I can't see your question. Okay. So let's just do some examples in here. They go back through some of the processes of finding your network. So this is a good resource for review on that. Where I really want you to look at is going down here in the bottom. Here we go. And you guys, what I'd like to do, just emulating what we would do in class, is go through some of this with you and then give you an opportunity to try some of this on your own as well. So just looking at some of the things, we'll do this first one together. They're giving us a different thing. They're giving us a host address. They're giving us a subnet mask original, and then a subnet mask after the subnetting has been done. And then they ask us to find some interesting things. So they present it to us differently than, of course, they ask us. Then they ask us the questions at the end, but that's okay. So we're starting off with a host IP address, and we see the original subnet mask. So that's a /24. So this definitely is a host address. Now we're going to a /224. So if you guys could type in your chat, how many bits did we borrow to get to a 224 in the last octet? Okay, we have a guess of 3. Anybody else think it's anything other than 3? Everybody comfortable with 3? I see 3, another 3. Okay. All right, everybody good with that? All right, so then borrowing 3 bits, how many subnets are we going to end up with? We just did this, right? Just type the answer. Yes, 8. All right. Number of host bits we're going to have? Five is the right answer, and then that gives us how many hosts per subnet? $30. Okay. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes. This is all the right answers here so far. I'll give you a few minutes, and then you can tell me what the network address is of this subnet. We'll do that one first. Anybody know yet what the last octet number will be for this network ID? Yes, correct, 128. So if we look back over just looking at this, where we were going up by 32, the next one would be, after this, would be 128. And then, of course, that IP address that we were just looking at, 139, would fall in the 128 subnet. The next one on top of that would be 160, would be the next one, adding 32 to that. All right, so good. Now I said 160 is the next one, right? Add 132 to 128. So then what's the broadcast if the next network ID is 160? Just tell me the last number. Right, good job. 159. So it would be the next network ID minus 1. And then you should be easily able to fill in these other two, because the first host would be the network ID plus 1. And the last would be the broadcast address minus 1. Everybody comfortable with those numbers? Any questions? All right, good. All right, let's do one more example. I'm just looking at the options here. Let's do problem number 5. All right, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to work on them. Oh, we have a question. Okay, I'll go back to here. What's your question? The magic number comes from, the question was about for sure where the magic number is coming from. The magic number is the bit value of the last network bit. So in this case, it's to the 5th. Yes. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. All right, now I'm going to take you down to this other one. And the 128.107.0.55 is an IP address, remember. You can see what the original subnet is, which would be a /16, going to a /24. All right, so I'll give you a few minutes. You can write this down or whatever, filling in this information, and then I'll ask you guys what the answers are. So I'll give you a few minutes to work on it. All right, anybody ready to give me number of subnet bits, number of bits borrowed? Great, 8. How many subnets will that provide? Yeah, a lot. All right, we have two. We have two different answers. 128 and 265. There are 8 bits borrowed, so it's 2 to the 8th. So, what do we think that is? 2 to the 8th. 128, 256, something else. Anybody know for sure? Everybody's sure? Right, I get more 256s than I get anything else. So it's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, right? It's definitely 256. Okay. I agree with you, 256. Now, excuse me. I still got a 128 thought. Isn't 2 to the 8th one? I thought 2 to the 8th was 256. I can get out my calculator. I can pull it up on the screen. Wow, my laptop does not have a calculator. All right, let me just look on my phone. Yeah, that's what I say, 256. Yeah, definitely 256. I'm doing it on my phone. Yeah, 256. Okay, 256 subnets is what will be created. So, number of host bits per subnet. So what are we left with? The /24, how many host bits do we have? Anybody know? So if you have a /24, that's your CIDR. This whole last octet is your host bits. So how many do we have? How many? 1 octet is how many bits? Correct, 8 bits. Okay, here we go. Number of hosts per subnet. So in a /24, how many usable hosts do you have? So 2 to the number of host bits, which we know 2 to the 8th is 256, minus 2. We got 8 because 8 is how many host bits are in the last. I just have a question. Okay, got it. Right, number of hosts, 2 to the 8th minus 2, so 256 minus 2. They give you 254. So in a /24, you always have 254 usable hosts per subnet. All right, so then what's the network address for this particular subnet where 55 is a host IP? Anybody know the answer to that one? Yep, that's correct. 128.107.0.0. Anybody have a question about that? All right, so using what we know, that we have 24 bits as network ID. And I'm going to go back over to my Word document, okay? I'm going to go down here, I'm just going to put in, what does a /24 look like in subnet mask. So 8, 8, and 8 bits, and then your host bits, right? So that's the /24 subnet mask. So the magic number still applies. Here's our network bits. Here's our host bits. And the magic number is still going to be the bit value of this last bit. What's the bit value of that last bit? Yeah, it is 1. Absolutely. So what's going to happen is those networks are going to go up by 1. So when we started off with 128.107.0.0, the next one's going to have the third octet go up by 1. So the next network ID will be 128.107.1.0/24. And then the next one will be 128.107.2.0/24. So knowing that, what would the broadcast address be of this particular network if the next network ID is 128.107.1.0? Mm-hmm. Here's what it is, 255 here. What do we want in the third octet? I don't think I can write below here. If the next network ID, yeah, it won't let me write anywhere else. If the next network ID is, and I'm going to just go over here, 128.107.1.0/24. So this is the next network ID. What's 1 less than that? Any guesses? Yeah, we got it. This would be 0.255. Let me take the rest of that out. All right, so the last one, remember the network bits are going to always stay the same, so if you follow that rule, 128.107.0, staying the same because it's the first 24 bits. And then the last bit would be all ones for the host, which would give you 255. Okay, good job, DJ, you got it. So then, first host usable would be network ID plus 1, 128.107.0.1/24. And the last would be 128.107.0.254. All of these would be /24s. Okay? Questions about any of those? Okay. There are a couple more in here. I wasn't going to go through them all, but they're all good to try out. You follow the same rules, you're going to get the same answer. Sometimes this one looks like, oh, this should be easy, and then you can see we get to the end here, and we're like, not really sure how to deal with that broadcast, and then, until we have to think it through. Follow the rules, and you'll be good. All right, any questions I can answer about this before we go back to the next topic? Looks like I might have a question. I'll just wait a second and let you type. How does the magic number of 1 equal 8? Equal 8 what? You mean the 8 bits? Bits per subnet? Okay. So the magic number in this particular example that we just did is the last bit value of the subnet. So it was the bit value of 1. The bits that in the subnet were the host bits. There are 8 of them there. They're not really directly related. The magic number is the last bit value of the last network bit, which in this case is a 1. Does that answer your question? No. Trying to figure out where your confusion is. It's per subnet. Are you confused by the numbers here and the answers? Two to the left. In this in which one? Well, we started. Let me just walk through it and see if I answer your question. We started off here with a /16, right? They provided us with that. They told us we're going to go to a /24. So knowing that, we borrowed 8 bits, right? We went from a /16 to a /24. If you go back and look at the beginning of this chapter where they went by octets, we went through this process. So you can see that in the book. That maybe that will help you. That will give us 256 separate network IDs going from the /16 to the /24. We have 8 host bits because the last octet of the subnet is all zeros. So all those are all host bits. So we have 2 things of 8 here, and that's probably where I'm not getting your question. We've borrowed 8 bits. We are also left with 8 bits of host. It's just because that's the way it worked out this time. Okay. So having 8 host bits, 2 to the 8 minus 2 gives us 254 usable addresses within each subnet itself. So as we start off with the address and network ID, this is an IP, a host address. This is an addressable address. So if you did ANDing, you could get yourself to that network ID of 128.107.0.0. Okay. If we were subnetting and getting all 256 subnet network IDs, this third octet would increase by 1. So it would be 128.107.1.0, .2.0, .3.0, .4.0, .5.0, all the way up to 255. Within each one of those networks, we have the usable range would be the same in each one, except for the third octet would increase. That number would increase by 1. You would go up by 1 for the first usable, and the broadcast network bits stay the same, 128.107.0, and then the host bits would be all 1s, which gives you 255. And then the last address is just 1 less than that. Does that help you with what you were thinking, what you were confused about? A little. Okay. Well, we can always go through it again next week if you want. Is that fair? Okay. All right, good. And also in the book where I would go back to looking at this is in the beginning of this chapter where we were subnetting based on the boundaries. This is where we went from a 16 to a 24. So it's actually doing that process right there on these pages. So that might help you as well. Okay? Okay. Now, last but not least, we look just a tiny bit at variable length subnetting. Now they have, this is covered largely in Cisco too, so we just touch on it here. And this is actually the most efficient way of subnetting. So not only do you subnet based on need, you don't have everything in nice little neat equal pieces of the pie. So the example that they use in the book here, and again we just touch on it a teeny bit here, is that we need 4 networks. You can see the host requirements range from 15 to 28, so fairly small. But the other thing that we got to note here is when you're looking here, what we see is not only 4 networks, but we see 7. Because in the middle here, in these WAN connections, they each are also their own separate network. So each one of these spots need a network ID as well, and they only need 2 addresses, 1 on each end of the serial link. So what can we do there? Well, we can use variable length subnetting. So what they're going to show you is, first off, dividing the 192.168.20.0/24 into 27/27. So accommodating the biggest number, which was 28 hosts. We're going to do a /27 that gives us 30 usable hosts. So we did that subnetting. This is what we get, right? So if we were to distribute these 8 network IDs, the first 4 would go to the LANs that have the 28 to 15, whatever in them, and distribute them out. Then we would use 3 of the subnets to go to a WAN, and 1 would be left. Well, the WANs are only going to use 2 addresses, and you're going to have 28 addresses in each subnet left over. So it's a not very efficient way of doing things. So what they end up doing is taking one of the subnets and dividing it a little further. So in this example, they took the, I guess, the last subnet and divided it more. So this is this mentioning of the unused portion. So visually what they did was they started off with the /30s. They used a couple of them, and then they took one /30 and divided it even more and created subnets that have 2 usable hosts. It says 4 usable hosts each. So what you end up with here is they use the first 4 for the first networks, those larger networks. They left 4, 5, and 6 unused, still have 30 usable in each one, and they took the last subnet, or the 7th subnet, and they divided it down into /30s, which gave them 8 address ranges that have 2 usable addresses in them. So they just borrowed a couple more bits just from that one /27. They changed it to /30s, and they got 8 /30s out of it. So then they have all of these left unused from the /30s, and they still have 3 /27s left in this address space. So it's just a more efficient way of dividing things out. And again, we only touch on it here. We don't spend much time on variable length subnetting in Cisco 1. You do in Cisco 2. So there is a video, and there's other videos about it, and you should watch them. Obviously not going to watch it here, but let's go through some more examples. So VLSM here, what are we looking at? Well, we don't even really know, other than we got /27s going on here, we have /30s going on here, so it looks like what we were just examining prior, that they are using it here. So this is what the result was. Oh yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. And they're just showing us, okay, we're going to put this onto the routers. You guys know how to put this stuff onto the routers. I don't think we need to go over this other than to note that you're doing the interface to the local area network, and then you're doing the interface to the WAN connection, noticing that you have two different subnets, just seeing the differences there. So this is just going to show you, yeah, what to put on the different routers. So I think we already understand how that works. Anybody not understand how what you need to do to put it onto the router? Okay, good. All right, so this is the end result of the VLSM. If you were to do basic fixed length subnetting, this is what we'd have done to solve this problem. Everything would have gone from a /24 to a /27. We'd have distributed it out. We would have had one unused network and a lot of unused stuff within these WANs, but that's okay. That's the way it would have stayed. By using variable length subnetting, we were able to preserve a lot more addresses, taking 3 of the subnets and not using them at all, by taking the last subnet and dividing it a little bit further down into a /30, where we use 3 of the /30s and we have 5 of them remaining. So what ends up happening on this network is you have, with variable length subnetting, you have 4 LANs that are /27s and all the serials that are /30. So you have a mix of different sizes of networks. And that is basically what variable length subnetting is. Okay, any questions about variable length subnetting? And like I said, they're going to just cover it just a little bit for now. All right, so just a teensy bit about planning. Just that you do have to plan, and you have to think about how you're going to distribute these IP networks and your subnetting, because you do want to plan for growth, and you don't want to have to redo it as your company grows. You want to be able to keep what you have and just continue to use it and grow. So you want to keep that in mind as you're planning your addressing scheme. And that's really all this section is talking about. Just being careful with your planning, and make sure that you write it all down. You do have to keep track of what you're doing, making sure there's no overlap, because that's really where the problems come in, or either IP addresses being assigned outside of the network that you're in and not matching, or there's being duplicates. So you got to keep track of what you're doing, and you got to write it down, and you got to plan it. And that's pretty much what that is talking about. The last little section here, and then I'll let you guys go to ask you if you have any questions, and then you can work on any homework that you have. It's a little bit about IP6. Now, do we need to subnet IP6? No, not really. There's enough unique addresses that we really don't need to be subnetting IP6, but they do talk about it a little bit, and it is possible, and it's much simpler. Okay, so with your 128-bit address for IP6, when we talk about subnetting, the interface ID stays the same. Okay, and the interface ID, if you remember from before, is equal to the host portion of an V4 address. Right, so that stays the same. What changes is the first 64 bits. Okay. So the first 48 is the global prefix, or what they consider the network portion. Okay? And then the bits in the middle they call the subnet ID. So if you're going to identify different subnets, you do it in these 16 bits in the middle. So how does that work in the grand scheme of things? So let me show you. Okay. In our practice, what we see is these numbers staying the same. That's the first 48 bits. Okay. That next little hextet is the subnets. What does it do? Well, you got those 4 numbers, for lack of a better word, in there. They're going to vary anywhere from 4 zeros all the way up to 4 Fs. That is it. That is the subnetting. So if we vary them, we vary just that number in that middle hextet. And at this point, what you generally see is we are provided with these. We don't have to figure them out. But in each one of these subnets, they each have 65,536 unique addresses in there. But the beginning doesn't change at all, just those subnet IDs, and anywhere from all 4 zeros to all 4 Fs and everything that falls in between. And that's really kind of it, okay? So there's really nothing more to it than that at this point in time. And like I said, when you're dividing it out, pretty much it's provided to us from Cisco, but it's really just kind of like a way to keep track. So if you're dividing it out, you can see how those numbers in the middle are just going to increase by 1. So you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to do anything to any formulas or anything else to figure that out. This is just the way it is. And then you can see how they assign them out into an addressing scheme. So we don't care how many usable addresses or any of that stuff at this point. Okay? Any questions on that? Again, just a reminder of how you put that onto the routers, what the commands are. Okay. And that's it. All right. So that's IP6, the teensy bit that they talk about subnetting there. So questions? Any questions at all about Chapter 8? All right. I'm seeing a lot of no's, and that's good. Any questions about what your homework is? All right. Terrific. Then we're going to stop there. Good luck with your homework. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for joining me online. And like I said, I am recording this, and I will hopefully be able to convert it and post it, and I'll send out an announcement when I do if you want to go back and look at anything that we talked about tonight. Okay? All right, guys. Thank you. I will see you next week. Go vote tomorrow. Good night, all.